The rain in Seattle was relentless that night, hammering against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the sprawling modernist mansion in Medina like 1,000 tiny fists demanding entry. Inside, the air was not cold because of the weather, but because of the suffocating cruelty that permeated the master bedroom. Lightning flashed, illuminating the silhouette of a man standing at the foot of the bed, his posture rigid with disdain. "Listen to me, and listen closely. You pathetic, withered anchor around my neck. I have already filed the divorce papers this morning. This house, the art on the walls, the furniture, and the luxury sedan in the driveway, they are all mine. The law is on my side, and frankly, so is life. When this is all over, I am marrying Sienna. She is young, vibrant, and actually capable of standing upright, unlike you." Caleb Thorne's voice was a serrated blade, cutting through the heavy silence of the room. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. His tone was laced with a calm, venomous certainty that was far more terrifying than any scream. He adjusted the cuffs of his Italian silk shirt, looking down at the woman shivering violently under the thick down comforter. Ilara Vance lay curled in the center of the massive king-sized bed. Her skin was translucent, pale as porcelain, beaded with a cold sweat that matted her dark hair to her forehead. Her chest heaved with shallow, rattling breaths. A severe autoimmune flare-up combined with pneumonia had left her bedridden for 3 days, hovering in a delirious state between consciousness and fever dreams. Earlier that morning, she had begged Caleb to pick up her specialized prescription from the pharmacy. He had left with a promise, but he had returned 12 hours later, not with medicine, but with a brown legal envelope. The silence in the room was broken only by the aggressive ticking of the minimalist clock on the wall, marking the seconds of a marriage that was rapidly disintegrating. Ilara tried to push herself up, her limbs trembling with the effort. Her throat felt like it was lined with broken glass. She reached for the crystal tumbler of water on the nightstand, her fingers spasming. The glass slipped from her weak grip, crashing onto the hardwood floor and shattering into a million glittering shards. The water soaked into the expensive Persian rug, a dark stain spreading like blood. Caleb watched the accident with a sneer of absolute disgust. He didn't move to help. He didn't flinch. He simply stepped back to avoid getting his polished loafers wet. "Look at you," Caleb scoffed, shaking his head. "You can't even hold a glass of water, and you expect me to spend the prime of my life nursing an invalid? I am a rising star in this city, Ilara. I am the VP of marketing. I need a partner who complements my success, not a hospital patient I have to hide in the attic." Ilara closed her eyes, fighting the wave of nausea and despair. It wasn't always like this. 5 years ago, when they lived in a cramped, drafty studio apartment in the University District, Caleb had been different, or maybe he hadn't. Maybe he was just better at hiding it when he needed her. She remembered holding him when he was fired from his first job, whispering words of encouragement while he cried into her shoulder. She remembered skipping meals so he could have a decent suit for interviews. "Caleb," Ilara's voice was a harsh whisper, barely audible over the rain. "Where is my medication? My chest. It feels like it's burning. Please." Caleb laughed, a short, sharp bark, devoid of humor. He reached into his briefcase, but instead of a pharmacy bag, he pulled out the thick legal document and tossed it onto the bed. It landed heavily on her legs. "This is your medication, Ilara. It's a cure for my life. It's called freedom. Open it. Read it if your fever-addled brain can comprehend legal jargon. It's a petition for dissolution of marriage." Ilara's trembling fingers touched the cool paper. The header was bold and undeniable. In that moment, the fever heat seemed to vanish, replaced by a glacial cold that settled deep in her marrow. She looked up at her husband, searching his eyes for a flicker of the man she had married. She found nothing but cold, hard ambition. "Divorce?" she breathed. "Now? While I am like this? Why wait?" Caleb paced the room, energized by his own cruelty. "I am sick of it, sick of the coughing, sick of the weakness. You are a liability, Ilara. You are dead weight. Do you know how embarrassing it is to go to galas alone? To make excuses for why my wife is never seen? People talk. They think I have a defective spouse, and they are right." He stopped at the foot of the bed and gestured grandly around the room. "And don't even think about fighting me for assets. I am the one who works. I am the one who brings in the paycheck. Everything here is in my name. You just sit at home, playing on that old phone of yours, probably scrolling through social media, living vicariously through people who actually have lives. You brought nothing into this marriage, and you will leave with nothing." Ilara said nothing. She stared at him, her dark eyes glittering with a strange intensity that Caleb, in his arrogance, mistook for shock. "I am giving you until dawn," Caleb declared, checking his watch. "I am going to Sienna's penthouse downtown tonight. I don't want to breathe the same air as you. Tomorrow morning, I am sending a crew to change the locks. If you are still here, I will have the police remove you for trespassing. Pack your rags and get out. Go back to your parents' trailer park. That is where you belong." He turned on his heel, the scent of his expensive musk lingering in the air like a toxic cloud. He paused at the door, looking back one last time, not with regret, but with a final twist of the knife. "Sienna understands me, Ilara. She knows what a man of my stature needs. She is healthy, she is beautiful, and she is pregnant." With that, Caleb walked out. The heavy oak door slammed shut, vibrating the walls. Moments later, the roar of his luxury SUV engine faded into the rainy night. Ilara was alone, abandoned, sick, divorced. For 10 minutes, she allowed herself to weep. The sobs racked her fragile body, causing sharp pains in her infected lungs. She cried for the years wasted, for the love she had poured into a black hole, for the betrayal that cut deeper than any physical wound. The revelation about the pregnancy was the final blow that shattered the image of the husband she thought she knew. But as the clock struck midnight, something shifted in the atmosphere of the room. The weeping stopped abruptly. Ilara took a deep, ragged breath, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. The vulnerability in her eyes hardened into something steely and ancient. The fever was still there, ravaging her body, but her mind, her sharp, brilliant, calculating mind, snapped into focus. She reached under her pillow. Her hand bypassed the everyday smartphone Caleb despised and found a hidden compartment in the headboard she had installed herself. She withdrew a sleek, matte black device. It was a prototype, encrypted, satellite-linked, worth more than the car Caleb had just driven away in. This was the device Caleb never knew existed. To him, she was Ilara, the sickly housewife who dabbled in online forums. To the global financial world, she was the phantom. She pressed her thumb against the screen. It unlocked instantly. No social media apps, no games. Just secure communication channels and real-time stock market feeds. She navigated to a single contact labeled simply, "The Architect." She pressed call. The line connected after a single ring. "Chairperson?" The voice on the other end was a woman's calm, authoritative, and deeply concerned. It was Evelyn Sterling, a legend in the corporate world known as the Iron Lady of Wall Street and the public-facing CEO of Vantage Zenith Group. "Why are you calling on the secure line at this hour? Your vitals monitor shows your heart rate is erratic. Are you all right?" Ilara coughed, a dry, painful sound. But when she spoke, her voice was stripped of all emotion. It was the voice of a woman who commanded an empire worth billions. "Evelyn, initiate Protocol 0. There was a heavy pause on the line. Protocol 0 was the nuclear option, the total scorching of the earth. "Ma'am?" Evelyn's tone sharpened. "Has the situation with Mr. Thorne escalated?" He crossed the line. Ilara rasped, staring at the shattered glass on the floor. "He served me divorce papers. He kicked me out. He is marrying his mistress. He left me here to die of pneumonia, Evelyn. He took the credit for the house, the car, everything." "I see." Evelyn's voice dropped an octave, turning deadly cold. "The audacity of that man is staggering. Shall I destroy him immediately?" "Not yet," Ilara whispered, a dark satisfaction curling in her gut. "I want him to fly high before the fall. I want him to touch the sun so the burn is absolute. But first, I need extraction. I cannot stay here. My condition is deteriorating." "I am dispatching the Medical Response Unit Alpha immediately," Evelyn replied efficiently. "We will be there in 20 minutes. Do you want me to bring the legal team?" "No legal team tonight. Just the doctors." "And Evelyn?" "Yes, Chairperson?" Bring the dossier. The one with the debt acquisitions. Understood. Hold on, Alara. We are coming. Alara ended the call. She lay back against the pillows, her chest burning, but her mind was cold as ice. Caleb thought he had discarded a broken doll. He had no idea he had just declared war on the founder and majority shareholder of Vantage Zenith Group, the conglomerate that secretly owned the bank his mortgage was with, the company he worked for, and the very ground he walked on. The game had just begun. 20 minutes later, the silence of the Medina suburb was broken not by sirens, but by the hum of 3 black, armored Mercedes-Benz Sprinter vans. They pulled into the driveway with military precision. The front door, which Caleb had arrogantly left unlocked to allow his cleaning crew access the next day, swung open. Evelyn Sterling entered first. She was a striking woman in her 60s, wearing a trench coat that cost more than most people's annual salary. Her silver hair was pulled back in a severe bun. Behind her, a team of 4 medical specialists in tactical gray scrubs moved with urgent efficiency. "Secure the perimeter," Evelyn ordered. "Get her stabilized." The doctors swarmed the bed. Oxygen masks were applied. IV lines were inserted with practiced ease. Temperature is 103.5 degrees. Oxygen saturation is low. "We need to transport her to the private wing at Providence immediately," one doctor reported. Alara looked at Evelyn through the oxygen mask. Her eyes were weary but fierce. "Did you bring it?" Alara asked, her voice muffled. Evelyn nodded, holding up a black tablet. "The acquisition of his debt was finalized 6 months ago, as you predicted. We own the mortgage. We own the car note. We own his credit card debt. And as of this morning, VZG has acquired a controlling stake in the marketing firm he works for. You own him, Alara. He is living in a cage you built, and he thinks he is flying." "Good," Alara whispered, as the sedative began to enter her bloodstream. "Let him have the house for 3 days. Let him bring her here. Let them celebrate. I want the eviction to happen when he feels safest." "We will handle everything," Evelyn assured her, brushing a strand of hair from Alara's feverish forehead with maternal tenderness. "Rest now. When you wake up, you will be strong again. And he will be nothing." They lifted Alara onto a stretcher and carried her out into the rain, shielding her with large umbrellas. The convoy vanished into the night as quickly as it had arrived, leaving the empty house silent once more. Downtown, in a penthouse overlooking the glistening city, Caleb Thorne raised a glass of champagne. Sienna, a lithe blonde with a predatory smile, draped herself over his arm. "To us," Caleb toasted, his face flushed with victory, "and to getting rid of dead weight." Sienna giggled, sipping her drink. "Did she cry? Did the little mouse squeak?" "She tried," Caleb smirked. "But she knows her place. Tomorrow we move in. I'm going to remodel that bedroom completely. I can't stand the smell of sickness. It's going to be a palace, Sienna. Our palace." They clinked glasses, oblivious to the fact that the champagne they were drinking, the penthouse they were renting, and the future they were planning were all built on a foundation of sand that was about to be washed away by a tsunami named Alara. The transformation took 3 days. While Caleb and Sienna moved their belongings into the Medina mansion, throwing Alara's modest clothes into trash bags and laughing as they redecorated, Alara was in the VVIP suite of the Vantage Zenith private clinic. Antibiotics, fluids, and rest worked miracles. But the true medicine was rage. Alara sat in a leather armchair by the window of her hospital suite, looking out at the Seattle skyline. She wasn't just recovering, she was preparing. She reviewed financial reports, authorized hostile takeovers, and monitored Caleb's movements through the security system she still controlled in the house. She watched on her tablet screen as Sienna criticized her kitchen. She watched Caleb throw her grandmother's antique vase into the garbage. She watched them defile the sanctuary she had tried to build for their family. "Alara," Evelyn said, entering the room with a crisp stack of documents. "The 3-day grace period expires tomorrow at 9 a.m. Are you ready?" Alara turned. She looked different. The pale, sickly woman was gone. In her place was a titan of industry. Her skin glowed with renewed health, her eyes were sharp, and her posture was regal. "I am ready," Alara said. "Initiate the foreclosure." And Evelyn? Ensure the tow truck for the car arrives exactly when the eviction team does. I want a symphony of destruction. The morning of the third day broke with a rare, brilliant sunshine. To Caleb, it felt like a blessing from the universe confirming his ascendancy. He sat at the head of the dining table in the mansion, eating a breakfast of imported smoked salmon and eggs. Sienna was opposite him, scrolling through Instagram. "This light is perfect for a selfie," Sienna murmured, snapping a photo. "Number, new home number, dream life." Caleb smiled. Checking his bank account on his phone, he expected to see his hefty bonus deposit. Instead, he frowned. "That's odd," he muttered. "What is it, babe?" "My account. It says frozen." Sienna looked up, her fork pausing halfway to her mouth. "What do you mean frozen?" "Probably just a glitch." Caleb waved it off, though a cold knot formed in his stomach. "I'll call the bank later. It's probably a security measure because I'm moving so much money around for the renovations." Just then the doorbell rang. Not a polite chime, but a heavy, authoritative pounding. "Who on earth is that?" Caleb stood up, annoyed. Probably the contractor early. He walked to the massive front door and swung it open, ready to scold a workman. Instead, he found 4 men in dark suits standing on the porch. Behind them, a sheriff's deputy stood with his arms crossed. And in the driveway, a massive tow truck was backing up toward his beloved luxury sedan. "Can I help you?" Caleb asked, his voice wavering slightly. "Are you Caleb Thorne?" the lead suit asked. He held a clipboard. "I am." "And who are you?" "I am the lead counsel for the Asset Recovery Division of Vantage Zenith Group. We are here to execute a writ of possession and immediate foreclosure on this property due to catastrophic default." Caleb laughed nervously. "You have the wrong house, pal. I pay my mortgage. I am a VIP client at First National." "First National sold your debt 6 months ago to VZG," the lawyer stated calmly. "You are in violation of the moral clause of your lending agreement, specifically regarding the abandonment of a dependent spouse, which triggered an immediate call on the principal loan. Furthermore, your credit cards, which are also underwritten by VZG, are maxed out and in default." "Moral clause? That's absurd," Caleb sputtered. "You can't just take my house." "We can, and we have." The lawyer handed him a document stamped with the court's seal. "You have 15 minutes to vacate the premises. Whatever you can carry is yours. Everything else is now the property of VZG." Behind him, the sound of grinding metal screeched through the air. Caleb watched in horror as the tow truck hook lifted the front of his sedan. "Hey, stop! That's a $100,000 car!" Caleb screamed, running toward the driveway. The deputy stepped in his path, hand resting on his holster. "Step back, sir. Let them do their job." Sienna came running out, wearing a silk robe, looking terrified. "Caleb, what is happening? Why are they taking the car?" "They're saying we're evicted. It's a mistake," Caleb yelled, panic rising in his throat like bile. "It is no mistake, Mr. Thorne," the lawyer said, checking his watch. "You have 14 minutes remaining. I suggest you grab your shoes." The next hour was a blur of humiliation. Caleb and Sienna were forced out onto the curb, clutching 2 hastily packed suitcases. The locks were changed in front of their eyes. An orange foreclosure sticker was slapped onto the front door. Neighbors, the wealthy elite Caleb so desperately wanted to impress, stopped their cars to watch. Some took photos. Sienna turned on him, her face twisted in ugly rage. "You said you owned this house," she shrieked, hitting his chest. "You said you were rich." "I am. I was. It's a banking error," Caleb pleaded, trying to grab her arm. "Banking error? They took the car, Caleb. My jewelry is inside, my clothes." "We can fix this. I'll go to the office. I'll get an advance. We'll go to a hotel." "A hotel? With what credit card?" Sienna scoffed. "I tried to use the card you gave me this morning for coffee. It was declined." "You're broke, Caleb. You're a fraud." "Sienna, wait. Don't touch me." Sienna pulled away, hailing a taxi that had just turned the corner. "I'm not sinking with you. I'm going back to my ex. At least his house is actually his." She threw her suitcase into the cab and slammed the door, leaving Caleb standing alone on the sidewalk in his pajamas and slippers, holding a single bag of clothes. The house behind him, the symbol of his ego, was now a fortress barred against him. He had nothing. But desperation breeds delusion. Alara, he thought. Alara must have done this. She must have complained to some charity or legal aid. He needed to find her. He needed to make her stop this madness. He dug into his pocket for his phone. He had 4% battery left. He dialed her number. It rang once. Then, it clicked over. But it wasn't a voicemail. It was a transfer. "You are being connected to the office of the chairperson," a robotic voice announced. Caleb frowned. "Chairperson? Hello?" a woman's voice answered. It wasn't Alara. "I want to speak to Alara Vance," Caleb shouted. "Tell her to stop this childish game. I know she's behind this." "One moment," the voice said coolly. A click. Then, a voice that sent shivers down his spine. Clear, strong, and utterly devoid of the weakness he remembered. "Hello, Caleb." "Alara?" Caleb gasped. "Where are you? What have you done?" "They took the house. They took the car. Sienna left me." "I know," Alara replied. "I'm watching on the security feed. You look ridiculous in those slippers." You did this? How? You're a broke, sick housewife." Alara laughed softly. "Oh, Caleb, you really never paid attention, did you? You were so busy looking in the mirror, you never saw who was standing next to you." "Stop speaking in riddles," Caleb screamed, attracting stares from pedestrians. "I demand you fix this. I am your husband." "Ex-husband," Alara corrected. "And if you want answers, Caleb, come get them." "Where?" "Look up." Caleb paused. He looked across the skyline toward the city center. Dominating the view was the massive obsidian glass tower of the Vantage Zenith Group headquarters. "Come to the tower, Caleb. I'll leave a pass at the front desk. Don't keep me waiting." The line went dead. The walk to the city took him 2 hours. He had no money for a bus. His slippers were shredded by the pavement. He was sweaty, disheveled, and raving mad by the time he reached the gleaming lobby of the VZG tower. The security guard sneered at him but handed him a visitor pass when he gave his name. Top floor, the executive suite. Caleb rode the glass elevator up 80 floors, his ears popping. Anger fueled him. He was going to confront her. He was going to demand she give him back his life. The doors opened into a lobby that smelled of white tea and immense wealth. The floors were marble. The art was original. Sitting behind a desk that looked like it was carved from a single block of granite sat Evelyn Sterling. She looked up at Caleb as if he were a stain on the carpet. "She is waiting for you in the boardroom," Evelyn said, pointing to double mahogany doors. Caleb stormed past her. He burst through the doors. "Alara!" He stopped dead. The boardroom was massive. A table long enough to seat 20 people stretched before him. At the far end, framed by the panoramic view of the city he used to think he owned, sat Alara. She was wearing a tailored navy power suit that screamed authority. Her hair was styled in a sleek bob. She looked healthy, vibrant, and terrifyingly powerful. "Sit down, Caleb," she commanded. Caleb stumbled to the nearest chair. He felt small, incredible small. "Who are you?" he whispered. "I am the founder and majority shareholder of Vantage Zenith Group," Alara said calmly, folding her hands on the table. "I built this company 5 years ago, right around the time you were fired and feeling sorry for yourself. I built it from that cramped apartment kitchen, formulating biotech patents and trading algorithms while you slept. But you were always home. You were always on your phone. I was running a global empire, Caleb. I made $1.5 million a month while you were bragging about your $5,000 bonus." Caleb's jaw dropped. $1.5 million? A month? Alara stood up and walked slowly toward him. "I hid it because I loved you. I knew your ego couldn't handle a wife who was more successful than you. I wanted you to feel like the man of the house. I bought your debt secretly to save you from bankruptcy last year. Did you know that? You missed 6 mortgage payments. The bank was going to foreclose. I stepped in. I let you keep your pride." She stopped right in front of him, looking down with eyes that were no longer full of love, but full of pity. "And how did you repay me? You called me a burden. You called me useless. You cheated on me with a girl who only loved your credit limit. And when I was sick, when I actually needed you for the first time, you threw me away like trash. Caleb fell to his knees. The reality crashed down on him. The millions, the power. The woman he had discarded was a queen, and he was the jester. "Elara, please," he sobbed, grabbing the hem of her pants. "I didn't know. I was stressed. I was blind. Please take me back. I love you. I've always loved you. Forget Sienna." She meant nothing. "We can rule this city together. Think of what we can do." Elara looked at his grasping hands. She didn't pull away immediately. She let the silence stretch, letting him hope. Then she stepped back, forcing him to release her. "You don't love me, Caleb. You love the idea of power, and you definitely don't love me enough to stay when I'm weak." She walked back to her desk and pressed a button. The doors opened, and 2 large security guards entered. "My company has a strict policy," Elara said, her voice turning to steel. "We don't employ liabilities, and we certainly don't harbor traitors." "Elara! No! You can't leave me with nothing!" "You did that to yourself, Caleb. I'm just balancing the books." "Get him out of my sight," she ordered the guards. "No, Elara, please." Caleb's screams echoed as he was dragged out of the boardroom, through the lobby, and into the elevator. He was hauled through the main atrium, past the stares of hundreds of employees, and thrown out onto the concrete sidewalk where his journey had begun. 6 months later, the Seattle rain was falling again, cold and indifferent. Caleb Thorne sat on a plastic crate in the back alley of a seafood market. He wore a heavy, stained apron. His hands, once manicured, were raw and covered in fish scales. He had found work as a fish gutter, one of the few jobs that didn't run a credit check or require references he no longer had. He was tired. His back ached constantly. He lived in a shared room in a boarding house on the edge of the city. He took a bite of his cold sandwich, staring blankly at the street. Across the road, a massive digital billboard lit up. It was a live stream of the Business Person of the Year awards. There, on the screen, 10 stories tall, was Elara Vance. She looked radiant, holding a crystal trophy. The headline read, "The Silent Titan: How Elara Vance Revolutionized Biotech." A reporter on the screen thrust a microphone at her. "Miss Vance, you have achieved so much. What is the most important lesson you have learned on your journey to the top?" Caleb stopped chewing. He watched, mesmerized. Elara smiled at the camera. It was a smile of genuine peace. "I learned that true worth is not found in what you own, but in how you treat people when they can do nothing for you," she said. "Never underestimate the quiet ones. And never, ever mistake kindness for weakness. Because the hand that holds you up is also the hand that can let you fall." The screen faded to black. Caleb sat in the rain, the cold water mixing with the hot tears running down his face. He looked at his scarred hands. He had held a diamond, and he had thrown it away because he thought it was glass. He finished his sandwich, stood up, and went back to gutting fish.